I'm Winnie Holzman, a writer, most notably of the musical Wicked, and I'm your host for today's half hour with As We See It, created by the enormously successful writer, showrunner, creator, executive producer, Jason Katims, who happens to be someone I've known for almost 30 years and deeply admire. Jason, of course, has created some of the most memorable programs on television. Relativity, Rise, About a Boy, Roswell, Parenthood, and of course, the incomparable Friday Night Lights. He began his very impressive career, as I was saying, almost 30 years ago on a little series I created called My So-Called Life, which is how we know each other, and we've been friends ever since. So I'm always looking for opportunities to hang out with him, and this is one of those great days. So let's get to it. Tell us a little bit about this truly wonderful, uplifting, actually, I think groundbreaking television series that you've created.
Well, first of all, thank you, Winnie. Thank you so much for doing this. And I like, in any kind of public forum that we have, I just want to thank you for being my mentor, my teacher, my friend. Winnie found me under a rock in Brooklyn before Brooklyn was like cool to be in Brooklyn. And hired me along with Ed Zwick and Marshall Herskovitz on My So-Called Life and taught me how to, write television and so many other things. So you're responsible for changing my life. So I want to take the opportunity to do that. And then As We See It is a show that I just love this television show so much. It's a simple premise. It's about three young adults who are roommates who happen to be on the autistic spectrum. It's been authentically cast with three actors who identify as being on the spectrum. And it's really just the story of them in their lives, doing all the things that we all are wanting to do, which, finding, love and relationships and getting a job and keeping a job but with the specific lens, told through the specific lens of being on the spectrum. And that's the show.
So we're going to see the trailer for it now.
You ready? I know that you can do it. Let's check in on how our weekly goals are going. As a part of moving into this apartment, we all agreed on a certain set of goals.
Yes, I need to get and maintain a job. Check. And I need to make friends.
Well played, Jack.
Thank you, but I didn't play well. You played poorly. You're very old.
I'm sorry, it's the Asperger's. He doesn't mean it.
I mean it. She tanked that hand.
I want a boyfriend. It's normal to have a boyfriend.
Here, look, he's so cute.
Ooh, I'd hit that.
I'm AJ. We live right above you.
I don't leave the building.
Why not?
Lots of reasons.
If you're lost and alone, or you're sinking like a stone, carry on.
Do you want your dad to be supporting you forever?
Yes.
I have cancer, Jack. I need to know you're going to be okay.
We should have a date.
Oh.
We can't have sex on date 1 or date 2, but on date 3 we can screw, okay?
What?
Carry on, carry on.
My roommate's birthday starts in 92 minutes. I have to be there, and it's going to be terrible.
Are you trying to invite me to a party? That's tragic.
All that fear and anxiety that you're feeling, you just gotta push right through it. Make that fear your bitch.
Here's my bitch.
Spent my entire life trying to hide the whole autism thing.
I think you are such a beautiful person that you shouldn't have to hide who you are.
That makes me want to throw up.
The best. I remember writing the email to you when it first dropped. We watched the whole thing, the whole eight episodes on Prime Video in one weekend. And I wrote to you. I was so moved and so thrilled because it was riveting. It is riveting. It's about everything that matters in our lives, really. Family and closeness and challenges and fear and how to overcome those fears. So when you first were telling me, this is years ago, right?
Yes.
That you were going to do this, you were hoping to do this. Were you picturing casting actors who identified as being on the spectrum?
You know, when I was first thinking about it, telling the story, it wasn't the first thing that occurred to me. But as I was going through the process of, writing the pilot episode and thinking about what the show was, it more and more I started to think about it. But I didn't know I really actually didn't know at all what the talent pool was like for actors on the spectrum. But the more I thought about, I wanted the show to, I wanted to get the show right. I had this deep sense of responsibility to try to get the show right. And as much as I was excited about doing it, it was scary. I don't want to do like a crappy version of the story. I don't want to do a version of it that didn't feel like it was true to life, And so as I was doing it, I started to think about that. And when Amazon called to, when they greenlit the pilot of the show, the first thing that I did was I called Cami Patton, our casting director, and said, I want to try to cast these three actors authentically, these three roles authentically. And would you do a search? And it's not usually the first thing you do when it's not the first thing you do is you think about casting. You usually first about who's going to direct it and produce it and all that stuff. But I knew that, but by that time and I put that much thought into it, I knew that that was the key to the story. And that's what we did. We started with the first thing that we did was Cami did the search and found these, three incredible actors. And that was the sort of became our, the way we built the show on that. We tried to do everything from that point as authentically as we possibly could.
Well, it definitely feels authentic. I mean, just being in that apartment that the three of them share.
Yeah.
I never I lost myself completely. I never felt like that wasn't their real apartment and they weren't really roommates.
Right.
And when you did the casting,
Yes.
And did those three incredibly riveting, those three actors, did they really amaze you? Were you?
Yes.
Did that shift things for you in terms of how you were going to write it?
Yeah, well, it shifted things in terms of how I thought the show should, not necessarily how I was going to write it, but how the show should sort of start to take shape, how when we were shooting it and making it. I saw them, the way that they were cast was, we did it differently than we normally, the normal casting process, because first of all, it was not about each individual one, it was about the alchemy of the three of them. Because a big important part of the story about this, to me, about autism was that no two people who are autistic are alike or look alike. And I wanted it to feel like it represented people who were different from each other and had different gifts and challenges. And so what we did was we brought a bunch of the actors, I think it was 9 or 10 people for those three roles, I brought them to my office in Santa Monica, and we set up like 2 cameras, we set up a couch and some chairs, and we made it like a living room, and we just had them act together. And we had different characters, different actors, we sort of like put different people, different combinations. And at one point, Sue Ann and Rick and Albert were reading together, and it was like, that was like the sort of that magic moment. And I was like, oh, this is our show. And so that was kind of how we did it. And then I wanted to, like you talked about the look of the apartment.
Yes.
Our production designer has had a connection to this story, had a child who was on the spectrum and understood it. And she would do things that were, things that you wouldn't even notice. And I kept saying, it was so important to me. I was like, look, I don't want them to be putting stuff on the walls that they wouldn't. because it's just like, you know, how you do a TV show, you do anything, you have brilliant artists who can make things look beautiful. And I was like, no, there should look beautiful, but beautiful not in the traditional way we think of it. It should be accurate and real. And
it looks so real.
We had people who would really embrace that. And then we shot, Jesse Peretz, who directed the pilot, you know, shot it in a way where he really allowed the actors to just act. We had 3 cameras going, and, you know, you get to really see them exist in the moment. And we have found so many just moments that were not writable shooting that way, just reactions and just people being surprised, and, you know, and letting people sort of, you know, really exist in their own skin and be comfortable and as they were acting. And that was a big, important part of how, of just, you know, sort of trying to, again, just make the show feel right.
Yeah, I think that's why it drew me in so strongly, and because it just feels like you're meeting these 3 incredibly beautiful young people in their 20s who have so much promise, but they have so much challenges, so many challenges that they're dealing with, and your heart just opens to them. And they're hilariously funny, but they're also, you take them completely seriously.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like this thing where it's so moving because, you know, they're in this world. They're so beautiful. They're just beautiful people.
Beautiful people.
Sometimes, you know, the world doesn't get them, and sometimes they don't get the world, that the world eludes them in certain ways. And but also the thing is that it's a beautiful thing about telling the story is part of the fun of it is because sometimes they don't know not to say things. They say things that are true and real, and they put it out there. And that's something from my experience. I have a son who, as you know, who's on the spectrum, who's now at the exact age of the characters in the show.
It's incredible.
And I know that's part of the thing that is just, it's true to that experience. It's one of the things that I have found over the years with my son and people that I've known through knowing my son. It's part of the beauty of, people is that they wear their hearts on their sleeve and they'll say what they feel, and they don't have, you know, that kind of guile. They don't have that way of, you know, masking themselves
right.
with the others.
They don't know how to lie.
They don't know how to lie. And even when they're trying to lie, you can see, and it's fun to watch them try to lie, you know, but there's something so beautiful about that. And it's something that I kind of wanted to capture. And that when you're so out there in the world, there's something really beautiful about it, but it's also very hard. It's very painful to be that way, to be so exposed and in the world. And we wanted to lean into all of that as we were sort of telling these stories.
You definitely succeeded. And, you know, as a writer, those moments when somebody ends up blurting out the truth, I could see you, I know you pretty well as a writer, and I could see you, the writer, you using those moments to shift the plot and to have things happen that you never would expect. You know, it was a great tool for you, I think.
It was. And then, as you said, it was a great tool in writing it. And then when you see what these actors brought to it, that's sort of unwritable, right? That's, you don't know. And, you know, like all of the 3 actors, but one of the first moments that I really saw that in shooting it was Sue Ann, who plays Violet. And she has in the first episode, this sort of meltdown with her brother when she wants to be sort of what she thinks of as what is it to be normal, and she wants that so much, and she has this sort of breakdown in the first episode, which is wrenching to watch. And you know, when I wrote that, there's no way I could have imagined what she did, and it's very important to say those actors are all they're not playing themselves, they're playing characters. The characters definitely not themselves, but I think that they are able to draw from things from their past. And I think Sue Ann, in particular, from her very young childhood, that she was able to draw on from those things that made it so arresting, makes it so arresting to
Absolutely.
watch. Yeah.
It gives it that extra level of emotional intensity that is just riveting. The word I would use is riveting. That's why we had to watch it in one weekend. We couldn't stop. So now let's show a clip from the series As We See It.
Who wants to start?
Harrison smells. It's
Jack?
probably because he's so fat.
Jack, please take out your headphones,
be
and
in the
that's
kitchen.
rude.
How am I supposed to
Hey,
get
Violet,
a
we
boyfriend
need
if
to
I can
have
get
one
married if I'm in the kitchen
conversation.
squirting mustard on sandwiches?
She said
Violet?
that word.
Violet, watch your language. Jack, is that how friends talk to each other?
No, but he's not my friend.
We're my best friends since preschool.
You're not even qualified to live here with us.
Of course he is. Your family's rented this apartment for all three of you, and you know that.
So we could become independent. Harrison will never be independent or have a
Harrison,
job.
don't listen to that.
His
Jack.
parents are filthy rich and they pay for most of the rent. Otherwise, you wouldn't even make the cut.
Jack. Harrison, I think that Jack might be a little agitated right now. And so he's saying things he doesn't actually mean, and I just want to find out how you're feeling about that.
I don't like him very much right now.
Yeah, I understand. Jack, do you hear that?
How am I ever going to hook up with a man?
Maybe you can go on a date with someone at drama club.
Drama club? Yeah, I want someone normal.
What about Douglas?
Douglas?
Yeah.
Ew, guess again, I'm not going to Douglas. But you
Violet,
definitely
language.
can if that's your thing.
Violet.
Look, I'm gonna be here a lot more often now, so I need this place to smell less like Harrison.
You're gonna be
Tinder
here
right
more
now
often.
to find a love connection.
Wait, Violet, Tinder is off limits.
Fine, Bumble.
No, we do not use our phones during group.
Love it. That really does capture a lot of the feeling of them together.
Yes.
I mean, you just feel like you're a fly on the wall,
Yes.
listening. So do you feel like there's a through line from Parenthood to this show?
Yeah.
Because obviously in Parenthood, for people who know it, and if you don't know Parenthood, right after you watch As We See It, all 8 episodes of As We See It, which I highly recommend, you want to check out Parenthood, because Parenthood is one of the most beautiful, life-affirming, lovable, and also uplifting shows that Jason Katims has ever done, that anyone's ever done. So when you did Parenthood, you were exploring a family whose son was on the spectrum, correct?
Yeah.
Did he have Asperger's in the show?
Yes. He had
That was
Asperger's. We called it Asperger's then. Now we call it it's all called autism.
Now you
Yeah.
call it on the spectrum?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's partly because there's so many variations, as you were alluding to before, correct?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what somebody said, which is as many people there are that have autism, that's how many kinds of autism there are. And that really does bear out as you know people in that world. But there definitely is a through line from Parenthood to As We See It. In Parenthood, when I did that story about Max Braverman, who was a boy who was, probably, I guess, 11 or 12 years old at the beginning of the show, and we kind of watched him grow up, on the show. There weren't any. I was a show on broadcast television. There were no characters who had autism. They didn't really say the word autism, and certainly there was not a character that was going to, have autism, was going to be like a regular on the show that we were going to follow for 6 seasons of a show. I went back and forth about whether to, as I was developing that show, about whether to tell that story, because I was scared of telling that story. I was scared, first of all, for the privacy of my family and my son, and also because I didn't know whether people were going to see it and be like, this has nothing to do with my life, and I don't know what this is, and it's sort of depressing. And it was one of the greatest lessons that I've ever learned about writing, which is, that you take that chance and you tell something that's scary to tell. And that was, I think, the story that people, I feel like the rest of Parenthood caught up to that story. Like, I feel like that was the story that people first gravitated to because it had the ring of truth. It felt real. And the show, all the other stories became as real as that story over the course of the show. But that story really led the way because it came from a real place. So I was very, it was very meaningful for me to tell that story and hear how much it meant to the community and to other people. Like Sawyer was getting to be a young adult. And I was thinking about and Kathy and I were thinking about, well, what's his future going to be like, and what do we do now, and what does he do now? And I realized there wasn't that much to go on. There was not as much written about, or that you see on TVs about adulthood on the spectrum. And I realized that I had this other story to tell. I had a professor in college who's, the adage about writing is write what you know. And he said, write what you're learning about. And I've always remembered that. And that was what I was learning about. And that's what made me, kind of want to feel like I wanted to explore this again, about adulthood. And also this was now a time when, TV was getting braver and we could cast it authentically. I mean, even it's changed from like now and a few years ago when we originally cast it. Like, I think now would be more of a, like even 3 years ago when I brought it up, when I thought of it, it was more, the idea was more, I would say, unusual or revolutionary. Now it's more like, in a good way, becoming, more the way
understood.
Want to approach.
Yeah, like that's just what we're going to do, right?
Yes.
And when you were first thinking of it and first doing it, it was kind of like, whoa, this is. Yeah. I'm really going to do this, and that's why you called your casting person right away, right?
Right. And wanted to see, and when I remember talking to her, and it was like, and she was like, basically, okay, let's try it. Let's see. She didn't know that we were going to end up with these incredible, actors. Yeah.
I love what your erstwhile writing teacher said about writing what you need to learn or what you're learning. Because I feel like that's one of the incredible gifts of being a writer, that what we do in our lives for a living as a career is constantly teaching us and constantly forcing us to grow and evolve and get deeper and learn stuff. And approach things we are frightened of. I do feel it's an incredible gift that we get to do this.
Yes, I agree. Writing from the inside out these characters and really getting inside of them and writing, not basically, writing the idea of what people are, but just being brave enough to sort of get in there and get under their skin.
Yeah, thanks. It's like getting under what you think you know about someone, to who all the complexity and wonder that person actually holds, rather than, I always think of it like if you were stuck in an elevator with someone and you looked at them and they were wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase or whatever it was, you'd think you knew everything about them, right? Yeah. But suddenly, if you're in that elevator for 6 hours, God forbid, you got to talking and crying and sweating and being nervous and opening up, you would find an incredibly complex person under that suit and briefcase, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, exactly.
And that reminds me actually of your other characters who are not on the spectrum, who are in the show, who are these incredible actors as well. They're all incredible. But I love Joe, the great Joe Mantegna. I love seeing him in that part as a dad.
Yes.
He's such a beautiful, soulful actor.
Yeah, he's amazing. They're all the cast, as you're saying, the supporting cast is amazing.
Sochi Bacon is incredible.
She's great, and Chris Payne, who plays Violet's brother.
Brother. Yeah, he's beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful work.
And Joe is just so wonderful. I mean, it's like I've been a fan of his. I've been watching him, since I was very, very young, growing up in New York and seeing him in David Mamet plays. I was like, I couldn't believe I was getting to work with him. And he also, he has an adult daughter who's on the spectrum. So he was really coming to the show in such a beautiful place and such a generous place. And he, it's been such a joy working with him. We would be doing these scenes and, we would start to like talk about the scene, like the way you talk to an actor about like the thing. you know, we would like get like 5 words out of us and each of us, and we would both be crying. I was like, oh, forget it. Go do the scene. What am I going to tell you? You know?
Oh my goodness me. Well, first of all, I would like to do this with you every week, whether or not you're up for it.
You're on.
I could talk to you for hours, but if you had, Jason, if you had to think of one thing that that is a reason why somebody should check out As We See It.
Yeah.
Why should they check out As We See It when there's so much else to watch? I mean, I know I can think of a reason, but tell me what your reason is.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, you know, it's funny. I set out to do a show about a coming of age story about these neurodiverse characters. And I wound up just doing a coming of age story. You know, it doesn't matter that they have autism. That part of the story gives it this specificity, which is great.
Yes.
But I think it's universal. I think these stories are incredibly relatable, whether or not you have any connection to this material. I think the show is sort of delightful to watch. It's funny, but it's not afraid to look at the hard stuff too. And I think that, you know, I know that when I look for TV shows, I look for shows that I feel like these kinds of shows where I'm going to fall in love with the characters and it's going to make me feel, and that's why I would watch it. I don't know. Why would you watch it?
Well, first of all, because, you know, after a while, you don't want another serial killer. There's kind of enough violence in the world, maybe, just a thought. And the show is this incredible combination of deep and heartwarming. Sometimes heartwarming in our culture, people think that means superficial. It's the opposite. It's nuanced and deep and thoughtful and personal. But it's also really fun and uplifting. And I may be crazy, but I think we could use that right now. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank our friends at Prime Video and thank all of you for watching and joining us today.